The clerk has certain statutory duties and has taken on or discarded other tasks over the years. Are there new responsibilities you would pursue as clerk?
Yes, thank you for the question. So first, the responsibilities of the clerk are mostly administrative, but some of those services that we previously had in the office have transitioned out. What I will do when I am clerk is work with city staff and our city council members to ensure that we first try to bring back the services that we held, such as passports and real estate transfer stamps. And after we secure those, I will look to expand our horizon into other matters in order to get records and legislation more accessible to our residents. I want to implement a language access policy that will enable me to produce information in Spanish for those of our residents that have a communications barrier. And that includes producing the Spanish newsletter and producing the city council minute in Spanish. This will allow our residents a more active participation in our local government and give them resources and information to seek assistance from us. And I think doing that will also lead to more transparency because we will be reaching a larger audience. So with that, it's gonna take effort, but I think with the relationships I have with the current council and with the city staff, it'll be obtainable for us.
Hi. My plan to expand the services of the city clerk is I really do want to bring a renewed focus of community engagement to the clerk's office and community outreach. My hope is to be able to provide services that the clerk's office has throughout Evanston. If that means bringing our office to every corner of Evanston by utilizing the many buildings that we have. We have the Levy Center where many of our seniors congregate. We have the Robert Crowns and other buildings where we could be providing services like for people to get their handicap cards or to apply to register to vote, and where it's easily accessible to them and within walking distance. We have, those resources, and my hope is to use the resources that we have to bring the clerk's office and its services to every corner of Evanston. And by doing this, also making sure that we are reaching out to community members who have been at many times forgotten and who we have not asked their participation. I am a longtime community advocate and a community organizer. I have these skills, and these are the skills that I plan to use to make sure that every Evanstonian has the ability to register to vote within walking distance.
Thank you so much. All right, next is candidate Pallard.
Thank you. The short part of the answer to this question is I wouldn't directly seek to add new statutory duties because, like Stephanie and Eduardo have alluded to, there is a lot that the city clerk's office currently does that needs to be made more accessible and brought to more of Evanston's communities. I see the city clerk as really a window into what local government can do for people, whether it's the handicap placards or simply having access to what the city council is doing. And when registering to vote, something that I would want to do is have regular events at the very least in all 9 wards in the city that serve 2 purposes of bringing information to our communities of what the city clerk's office can do, how you register the vote, how you run for office, how if you have certain ideas about what the city needs to be doing more of, how you can get that message in as well. And in addition to getting that information out, listening to the people that we would be talking to, what can the city clerk's office do better? How can we make these services more accessible? What do you need from the clerk's office, and how can we work together to make that happen? So as far as making things more accessible, that's what I would want to primarily focus on.
So there are small practical services that are going to be fairly easy to bring back. Notary services. My number one ambition, and one that will be the hardest to fight, will be to bringing Freedom of Information Act services, so that I can be providing residents the transparency that we are required by law to provide, and which has been taking right now a couple years. I would also like to bring back giving information to council. The clerk historically and generally are the people who give information to council members and empower them to make evidence-based policy decisions. And being able to create that agenda and create the packet also helps move that policy to just helping council make better informed policy decisions, and sets benchmarks that we can be tracking that progress.
I would like to modernize and improve the office. One way is by using the internet to make it more accessible. Also, I would like to expand voter education. And I think there's a very concrete way to do this, which is by engaging with the school districts and the community, and having the city clerk and others go out into the community, into the schools, and teaching young people how to vote and why they should vote, and bringing in other elected officials, and with the goal of being to teach young people to become voters for life. I think that's really crucial to the future of Evanston and to the future of our country. But I also believe that we need to reach out to everyone and solve problems. So if residents come in and they have a problem that's specific to the city clerk's office, great, we'll give them an answer. But if they have a larger problem with the city, I think it's incumbent upon us to work to try to find them an answer to that as well. And I think we want to work with the city staff as closely as we can to as I said, to modernize and improve the office.
What role do you expect to play in local, state, or national elections? 90 seconds.
The role that I hope to play is, I really do value my skills as a person who has been in the streets and knocked on every door and encouraged people to get out to vote. I really do want Evanston to be a powerhouse when it comes to voting and making their voices heard. I want to make sure that when it comes to our elections, that we have a smooth process and that we are accessible to every resident in Evanston. This includes making sure that we as a community are encouraging everyone to be registered to vote, to giving them information about their local elections, their state elections, and national elections. And this is something that I am very passionate about, and that I have been doing in many different communities, and is a skill that I hope to bring to the clerk's office, and make sure we are encouraging people to use their voice, so that our people that we are electing reflect the values of our community.
The role that I think I would most like to play with regards to elections is really lowering or removing barriers as much as possible, whether that's for being an informed voter or running for office. I think Clerk Reed has a good baseline in place right now as far as informational opportunities for people to get information about what local issues are going on so that they can approach the ballot box better informed, or just as importantly, if people are interested in running for office, giving them the whole download of what that means, what getting the petition signatures are like, what the objection process might be like. 'Cause I've also knocked on a lot of doors, worked on a number of campaigns. It's not an easy process. And I think that for democracy at all of these levels to function as well as it can, we need more people willing to run for office that will actually be able to meaningfully represent their communities. And the clerk's office, I think, is an entity that can absolutely work towards making that happen, both through the information that we're able to give out and template forms. I'd like to partner with local organizations, local attorneys if possible, because the objection process can often serve as a very scary, if not insurmountable barrier. And I think that's something that we can work to make a little bit of an easier thing to tackle so that more people are willing to try and run for office. And I think our community is better off.
Thank you very much.
Well, I agree with candidate Pollard that our current clerk has used technology and many different avenues to bring in more voters and register more voters. And I will also be doing that. I will be in advance year round. I will be registering voters and giving them information on how to register at the office and the other areas. I will also be implementing year round an email from the clerk's office that tells you about all of the different ways to vote, how to get your mail-in ballot, and again, how to register if you want to do it online, and how to get mail-in ballots online. There's a lot you can do online. I will also be having the emails for potential candidates, information about what you need to submit as a candidate, photos, images of appropriate bindings, and make sure that everyone who wants to be a candidate can be a candidate. And we will be doing all of that all the time and in every community and in as many languages as necessary for Evanston so that we can have everybody's voice heard across all of our demographics.
Thank you very much. Candidate Beebe.
This is a great question for me because as a retired federal agent, I'm very familiar with state and national politics and national government. And I have to say, my ambition would be to get involved in both state and national politics and be vocal about this really disaster of voter suppression. Illinois doesn't have as many problems because we're a solid blue state and Evanston's a solid blue city. But this idea nationwide of voter suppression is really a disaster for the United States of America. And as Evanston City Clerk, I realize that's a local office. Nonetheless, as one of many city government employees and state working with the state and with the nation, I would like to be very active in doing what I could to fight against voter suppression and to increase early voting and to increase mail-in voting and to make it easier for people to vote and to make sure their votes count. It worked, thank goodness, in Georgia this time around, and I think it's a continuing battle that we have to fight.
So I think this is something I already take part of over the past 4 years when elections have taken place in Evanston. I've been the one coordinating with Cook County and its staff, with our internal staff, making sure that early voting is possible, that we have polling locations in our city. I've been able to ensure that residents are able to go out and participate when elections occur. When people need mail-in ballots, I've been the one to mail them out their applications, or I have, in many occasions, drove into their homes to personally deliver these applications for them to ensure that they can submit their applications on time. I think I'm prepared to tackle this responsibility because I've been able to ensure that when polling places close in one area, we can bring them to somewhere else and ensure those residents can continue to participate. What I also want to look at is a bigger facility to host early voting. You know, right now in the room downstairs, it's not ample enough for space. So I want to take them to perhaps the new Robert Crown Center that has more room in order to get more booths in there and better spacing. I also want to make sure that when elections happen, people know the information they need, that they know to go to the State Board of Elections website, the Cook County Clerk's website, to see the guides and the directions and the information they need to submit their petitions so that when the time comes to submit them into our office, they know how to do it accordingly.
Thank you so much. All right. Some communities in Cook County have appointed clerks. Do you think the Evanston clerks should be elected or appointed? And please explain.
So I think that this is a great question, by the way, thank you. I think that the Evanston City Clerk being elected is a good thing, and the Evanston City Clerk should remain an elected position. And there are a number of reasons here, but the biggest one I feel the need to point to is the clerk's responsibilities as FOIA officer. FOIA, that process is something that can be can be potentially confrontational between Evanston residents who feel they have a right, and often do have a right, to have something, whether it's from the Evanston Police Department or the Evanston Law Department, made public. And the individuals on the other side who are hesitant at best to release that information. And the clerk serves an important role as an elected, publicly accountable official to take charge for making those decisions and ensure that everything that should be made public is made public. And in that vein, something I would want to advocate for if I'm elected as clerk is that the responsibilities for both the Evanston Police Department and the Evanston Law Department FOIA requests should be placed back into the hands of the city clerk, because that is those are two of the most potentially serious areas, and we need a publicly accountable person making those decisions, publicly accountable and publicly elected.
I think that moving to an appointed clerk would be a terrible step in lessening our democracy. An elected clerk is directly accountable to citizens, and there are no intermediaries. They serve the public. I believe there's only one city in Cook County where that has an appointed clerk, and about 21 villages. And that's out of 130 municipalities, and most townships also have an elected clerk. Where this has been proposed before in those municipalities, it usually doesn't even make it to the ballot, because the residents want to have officials directly responsible to them. It makes them more autonomous. And the clerk's office, in addition to being a FOIA officer, is also an auditor statutorily, where we have no comptroller. It is a compliance officer. It records all council minutes, including closed minutes. And that's information I think we want to ensure that somebody is doing who is directly accountable to the city. I mean, excuse me, to the city residents.
I believe that the best thing about this city clerk being elected is that the clerk remains independent of other elected officials and of the staff. And as others have mentioned, responds directly to the residents. And the other thing, of course, is that therefore every 4 years, the person who's the city clerk can be changed. I know there's some villages near here where they've had the same city clerk for decades. Not that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but the clerk's work has to speak for itself. So I believe that the idea that the clerk is elected, I like the idea of having increased independence. And when that clerk can speak up and say what she or he believes to the mayor and to the staff and to the residents. I think it needs to be a collaborative effort. And if people don't like how the clerk is doing their work, then they can vote them out. And I do like that idea.
Yes, thank you. So I agree with what everyone else said. I think that it is important that the clerk be elected rather than appointed. However, I would want to leave that decision to the public, because if they decide that they would rather have an appointed clerk rather than elected, then by all means, but it's the public's decision and not the body's decision. I think for the purposes of keeping accurate records of the city, it's important that we have an individual, a city clerk, that is only responsible and who responds to the residents and not the city council or the city manager. For the purposes of transparency, one of the biggest responsibilities of the clerk is being a FOIA officer. So we have to ensure that we have someone in that role that is going to wield that responsibility in the best interest of the public and ensure that there is a transparent process in all matters that affect us as individuals here in the city, and that we were able to know what's happening in our community. And ultimately, it's a good thing to have clerks come in and out every so often, because we can always bring in new, fresh ideas from someone else. So it's an important part of our system here, and I want that to continue for years to come.
Yeah, I'm sitting here before you today because I do believe that there should be an elected clerk, and I think most of us here are as well. I think it's important. It gives voters an opportunity to have an avenue to have an independent, elected clerk and hold them accountable when, they believe that person is or is not doing a good job. I also think it's a great office that can yield its power to help, restore trust in our community, be a liaison between the residents of the community and the city. The clerk is in a very unique position where it provides access. It provides a place where people can come in and get information and also, tell us, what it is that they want to communicate to our city council and our staff. And, that partnership and having a liaison that can work between, the residents and the council and the staff, it's a wonderful, it's a wonderful position that we have now, and it would be a shame to lose it. And the clerk can, help to restore trust and help to restore accessibility for all of our residents. And that's why it should remain as an elected position.
Thank you very much. The clerk is one of several Evanston officials who responds to FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests. Do you have any ideas for improving FOIA policy and procedures? 90 seconds.
Yes. So one of the major issues are that response times and PAC appeals to the Public Access Counselor and Bureau out of the AG's office have increased. Right now, I believe there's a philosophy, and I don't believe it is reflective of our law, which under statute, a primary duty of government is to provide access to the public of public records, and they need to be expediently and as efficiently as possible. So when we're denying records and those items are going to the Public Access Bureau, they take sometimes 2 years for you to get those records. That's just happened. We're only starting to get back those findings for Robert Crown and get those records. So I believe it needs to be under a primary FOIA officer, one FOIA officer. I believe it needs to be the clerk. I believe that there should be a lot of hands in that pot for oversight and evaluation of documents. And I don't believe that the law department should be involved heavily unless we also have an elected corporation counsel who is also directly accountable to the people.
I think people need to understand that a Freedom of Information Act request is a legal document. As a federal agent, I worked with FOIA requests quite a bit, and I'm very familiar with them. And I think the best way to improve FOIA policy and procedure is to understand the law and apply the law. So if a citizen comes in with a FOIA request, it's crucial that that FOIA request is worded correctly or as well worded as possible. And there are very, very strict time limits on when the person, the information is being requested of, they have to get back to you. And if they don't get back to you, it's actually quite a serious problem. So I'm not sure if we mean that Evanston, if we're not holding those people accountable or what, but we need to follow the law on this. And if a FOIA request comes back and it's denied, it doesn't mean you walk away with your head down. It means you rewrite that FOIA request. You use different language, or you appeal it to the city, or you can also appeal FOIA to the state. And I think it's up to the clerk to teach the residents and maybe to help keep the staff on top of their game. But it's an important law, and we have to follow the law. I think that's the best way to improve the policy.
Yes, so as one of the officers that's currently responsible for overseeing the FOIA process for the city, I think there's a lot of avenues we could do to improve that process. And one of those is making information that's being requested by individuals public, because we sometimes get other people requesting the same information, but we require them to submit a FOIA request in order to produce those records for them. I think it's important that we just simply make those documents readily available for everyone. So that way we avoid having that person having to submit a FOIA and then having to wait between 1 to 10 business days to receive that same response. I think that's gonna cut down the wait on FOIAs and cut down the number of FOIAs we receive if we just make all of that available to the public. Secondly, for FOIA, if we bring back records into our office under our purview, such as police records, I think that'll bring back trust between the residents and the city council and local government. I think that has to be a collaborative effort. If we are reviewing documents that have to do with police matters, it's important that it's a collaboration between our office, the law department, and the police department to ensure that we're properly redacting information and sharing it with the public in order to increase transparency with our police department.
I believe in order to help residents have access to FOIA and, feel that they trust, our local government and city government, I think it's important to help residents learn how to navigate the FOIA process, know how to go through the next request system, understand that they can come into the office and also, they can come in and file a FOIA request, and, also making sure that we are accessible, that we are willing to take FOIA requests over the phone, willing to take FOIA requests over email. And because not, assuming that everyone has mobility or everyone has a computer to access those records is, it's just not equitable. Another thing is that, we should make sure that our FOIA officers are accurately trained every year, like they're supposed to, that they're taking their trainings on time, and that the clerk is also taking those trainings, and encouraging other people who, community members who care about this process to join in and also take trainings and understand, what a FOIA request is and the information that is available. And also I think restoring those services back into the power of the clerk is important, so that we can restore, trust and increase confidence in our city government.
Thank you.
So I'm going to, by and large, be agreeing with most of what I heard. There are a lot of great ideas here. When it comes down to it, I think that the best core change to make to improve that process is going to be a philosophy internally that errs on the side of release. And obviously that's going to have to be combined with teaching our community members about what the FOIA process is, how to navigate it, making the process as accessible as possible. And in order to ensure that responses are being given out on time, it's going to require the city clerk's office to be working together closely with whatever the other related office is to make sure that we are responding quickly and accurately. I would also agree wholeheartedly with Eduardo's suggestion about previously released documents being made public, and would also just like to express my agreement with Misty that while the Evanston Law Department, of course, needs to be involved, I would want to minimize that involvement a little bit unless we have an elected corporation council. By and large, I agree with most of what I heard.
How should the city clerk interact with and support others in city government, both elected officials and city staff?
I think as closely as possible. I think communicating is key. I think teamwork is everything. I've played team sports my whole life and coached team sports my whole life. I think it's important to lead, and the way you lead is by doing. I think if we can all communicate and cooperate, it doesn't mean being a yes woman or a yes man, or, but it means exchanging ideas. Again, these are legal positions, and you also have to follow the law, which doesn't mean you can question the law, but we do have to follow the law. But I think the key is to communicate, to find out what people need done and to help them get it done. And if the clerk's office needs something, it's to let people know ahead of time, to ask for help and to get good ideas and to take that advice. So I think the key is to communicate. I think it's to modernize. I think it's to improve the office, and work and play well with others really is what it boils down to, so that the staff can do what they need to do, the elected officials can do what they need to do as efficiently as possible, and with the end result being that it will benefit the residents as much as we possibly can. We have a lot on our plate, meaning the city of Evanston, and we need to be as professional and efficient as possible in handling everything.
Thank you. Candidate Gomez.
Yes, to me, it's about having a clerk who is accessible and responsive to our city staff and elected officials in a timely manner. It's ensuring that our records are kept correctly and ensuring that they're produced to staff and council in a timely fashion as well. Over the years, I've worked with all the city staff, department heads, elected officials, and whenever there's a request that they need from our office, I make sure that I respond immediately, because I know that the more I wait, it affects their ability to do their job, and therefore it can affect the way we conduct business in our city. So it's about having a city clerk that is accessible. It's also, to me, making sure that that we respond to the needs, that we collaborate effectively, that there's a city clerk that is willing to work with city staff and elected officials to advance the goal of the office and not impinge on its ability to service the community.
I would love to bring in new ideas, fresh ideas of how to bring collaboration. I've been able to collaborate with city staff and the various departments within our city through my work in the nonprofit sector. Past meaningful ordinances, and not only meaningful ordinances, but have provided, my knowledge in the best way that I can to benefit our community members. As clerk, I really do want to continue to work collaboratively, sorry, that is my Spanish coming out, with our city staff, and making sure that, they are bringing in fresh ideas, provide my knowledge, provide them with my, again, skills with community outreach, to make sure that we are creating, ordinances and policies that reflect our community's values. And I also want to work with our elected officials to make sure, that if there is anything that the clerk's office can do to take away some of the burden of just information, and making sure that they have access to information, making sure that they are receiving public comment in time, making sure that they are hearing from the community so they can make informed decisions, and that their decisions reflect the values and, the will of our community. And I think by doing this, we will only grow as a community and build.
Thank you so much.
I see this as the clerk's role interfacing with other city staff and elected officials coming down to communication and relationships. So one of the clerk's roles in the city code is sending referrals from council to the various committees or places that they need to go. And I think a logical extension of that role is ensuring that there's active and important communication going on between the various parts of the city government. And that's something the clerk's office can easily do. But I think the other piece of the puzzle here is building relationships. And I think my community organizer training I've had with the People's Lobby and Reclaim Evanston puts me in a good place to do that, because we can start from a baseline of all being in local government because we want to serve the citizens of Evanston. And when you can build from that point, the clerk will be able to support whether elected officials or city staff and things where we are working together. But when there are situations where some city staff or some elected officials are not making themselves as accountable to their residents as they need to be, not really living by the values that they campaigned on, I would be able to hold those people accountable, both within private conversations and through and through public processes as needed to hold their feet to the fire and make sure that we're actually doing what we got there to do.
Thank you very much.
Fortunately for me, I already have collaborative relationships with a lot of city staff and elected officials who are there now, and appointed officials as well as candidates coming in. So I know I work well with a lot of the people we have there. And I already understand constraints they're under, and I would like to lift some of those, especially as it regards whistleblower restrictions for oversight by the public. The public should have a lot of all information necessary to hold us to account, and that is what will deter unethical conduct. And I want to be ensuring having a relationship where we are continually training and educating all of our staff and officials. I know everyone knows that we have a managerial form of government, but not everyone understands that separation of power, and that it's constitutionally based. As a home rule unit, we can't change that without a referendum. And these are a lot of issues that have I know we've struggled with, especially over the last 4 years. But working together, collaborating, knowing that we're all holding each other accountable, and to serve the public, and keeping that at the forefront at all times is how I intend to carry out all of my relationships.
How have you learned about the responsibilities of the clerk position, and where will you turn for guidance in the initial part of your term? 90 seconds.
Yes, thank you. So I am currently, like I said, the deputy city clerk for the city of Evanston. So for the past 4 years, I have grown into the role of city clerk. I have sought guidance from other staff that have previously been in that office to seek their guidance. And so I learned about the role by actually doing the role, by doing the core responsibilities of the job, by being there every single day, by collaborating with elected officials, by internal city staff. And so, I am an individual that likes to learn from others. And I think the only way I can do that is by surrounding myself with people who have ideas that are different than mine, that may allow me to expand my capacity to be a better city clerk. I will also partner up with some of the municipal leagues of clerks in Illinois and join those organizations. So that way I can learn what clerks are doing, not only here locally and on a national level, but also around the world. There's 2 leagues that are imperative to that process, and I want to join those leagues to seek guidance from other elected clerks that have been in their role for long periods of time, and hopefully bring those best practices that they have in their community into ours, so that way I can be a better leader and an advocate for my community.
I have reached out to former clerks from Evanston, but then I've also sought the mentorship of clerks in our surrounding area. I think it is important that, our clerk's office is at the forefront of, being as modern as possible and providing the most expedient and modern services, services that, other neighboring communities are providing. So my first task when I decided I wanted to run for office and wanted to run for clerk is making sure that I, fully understand the office and fully understand, what other clerks in the surrounding area are doing, and seeking their mentorship. And, I do want to, you can find more about this on my website, but, making sure that we are part of the various organizations, and that we, myself, seek accreditation from these organizations. So we know that we are a accredited clerk's office, that we are trained, and that we are seeking the best education to provide the most, accessible services and the most expedient services. And, this is something that, anyone who holds this office should seek to do. And this is training that both employees and the clerk.
Thank you so much.
So I really learned a lot about what the clerk's office does from two places. And one of those places was after getting to know Clerk Reed while he was running for this office 4 years ago and knocking on a lot of doors for him. By being involved in local Evanston issues, you see the way the city clerk interacts with the council and the rest of the city government. The other part of where I really feel like I learned a lot about this office was during the legal defense of the Evanston voter initiative and trying to figure out a way to make that happen. That involved doing a lot of legal research into both the Evanston City Code and relevant state laws, and really seeing what the clerk's office is supposed to do, what the clerk's office can do, and what the clerk's office can't do. As far as where I would want to find guidance in the first parts of my term if I'm elected, I feel like we're going to hear a lot of the same answers here. I would want to continue to seek guidance from Clerk Reed. I think he brought a lot to the office, and I would want to ensure that I was building off of the work that he had done. And then it would also come from building relationships with local clerks in our neighboring municipalities, joining the various leagues that Stephanie and Eduardo talked about. There's a lot of expertise out there and a lot of best practices, and whoever the next city clerk is would be well served to learn from that as much as possible.
Before I started petitioning back in August, I read all of the literature basically that exists in Illinois as to clerks. I am obviously a journalist and researcher, and so that's what I do. And so, but I've had hands-on experience in being in public participation, and I have relationships with both the current city clerk and with our former clerk Green. And I think actually what's really been fantastic about both of them is that they've had such incredibly different styles and different services, and they've both been completely transparent about what worked and where their weaknesses were. And so because of that transparency, and I thank them for it, I have already put together what works best for the public, what doesn't. And I already know those things. I know parliamentary procedure. I have a really robust knowledge in FOIA and our form of government and all the relating statute as it comes to serving the public and the public's rights, which will always be forefront for everything. And I'm ready to get started from day one on that.
Well, I've spoken with several of the former clerks. I've also spoken with former mayors, former aldermen, people employed by the city, and many citizens and residents as well, to learn what they know about clerk. I also read through the regulations for the city clerk. I read the report prepared by the League of Women Voters on the city clerk position. So I studied the history and talked with many people about the city clerk and its role and the clerk's role. When you ask who would I turn to for guidance, anyone and everyone who can teach me anything really is what it boils down to. I'm an equal opportunity learner, I suppose. I would certainly, if Clerk Reed would be available, I'd like to speak with him. I'd certainly speak with Mr. Gomez, but also I'd find out from the city staff what they need and want from the city clerk. I'd find out from elected officials what they want and need. I'd talk with the mayor and find out what the mayor wants and needs, and what the best way to get things done. I think that's the bottom line, is the city clerk is a problem solver kind of office. The clerk needs to get things done. People need information. They need administrative actions taken. They need.
Thank you very much. What measures will you use to determine whether you are successful in carrying out the duties of clerk? 90 seconds.
Yes, I hope to constantly and continuously receive feedback from our community, but also from our city staff and our elected officials. I think that, it is important that I listen to their guidance and listen to what they want of the city clerk, because ultimately those are the people who put us in office and are there to hold us accountable. I am, one of my many skills is getting feedback from people, and I truly appreciate and love to grow from what others have to say and what other people's ideas are. So those are the people who I will look at to measure if what I am doing is successful or not. I will also, as the election official, will also look at things like our voter turnout and also see how the people in our community, if we have more people registered to vote, and because those are, tangible measures to know that, if we are doing community outreach, if we are doing voter registration drives, encouraging people to vote, that data is accessible to us and is immediate information that we will have after every election. Thank you.
So I would also want to get feedback from the communities of Evanston through something like holding regular listening session type events in all 9 wards. And what I would be looking for is how much more accessible people find their local government to be. Is the FOIA process easier? Do these communities have a better understanding of what Evanston officials are actually doing? Has the process of making their voices heard through public comment or whatever other form become easier? And as far as the role of election official, I think I would consider my term a success if I saw, like Stephanie was saying, more people registered to vote, seeing the Evanston voter turnout go higher. Something else I would also want to be looking for is more first-time candidates running for office. That's something I think the city clerk can have a pretty significant impact on, and something I would very much want to work towards. And if I hear from Evanston communities that public government's more accessible, they feel that they can better make their voices heard, and I see more people running for office, I'll consider that a success.
I think that our local elected officials will probably tell you that they get a lot of feedback from the public on a daily basis to know where they're succeeding and where they're falling short. And as I will for every other elected official, I intend to make sure that people know if there's enough feedback on somebody saying that they're not feeling like they're able to participate or have access to documents, I will set benchmarks with them, and I will work with our local groups of various types of equity to ensure that I am performing equitably and providing services equitably. We have automatic benchmarks when it comes with FOIA. I will know that I'm succeeding, and my office will, if we are lowering response times and decreasing the number of appeals going to PAC. And same with the Open Meetings Act, if we are lowering those appeals. I will know I succeeded if I have more registered voters, if I have more voters turn out, and if those voters look like our city demographics. And that's part of opening up public participation, ensuring that everyone who wants to participate knows how to and is informed on the issues, and that I am engaging them to ensure that they have a link to our government, and that they know our leaders are considering their opinions and their challenges.
The way that I would measure whether or not I'm being successful as a city clerk would be primarily by listening to people. In my work experience of almost 3 decades, if you're not doing a good job, you hear about it. So I think that's a pretty direct way to find out if you're doing a good job or not. But also, my goal would be to try to teach people new things. So if they came with a question or something, and they would say, "Oh, that's great, I didn't know that," and to communicate with people, and by listening to what residents and staff and officials tell me. And if they say, "Hey, we need more of X," I would strive to get more of X. Or if they don't understand something, if there's something wrong or we have a conflict, is by explaining, my position as city clerk and listening to their thoughts, but responding quickly to residents and staff and officials. I think that's very important. And also, I'd love to teach more young people about voting. I do think that being the local election official is a vital role. And I would be pleased to find little kids, 3rd and 4th graders saying, hey, that's really great, or that's really cool, or I can't wait to vote when I'm 18. I just think that would be fantastic.
So the way I would handle that is the same way I handle my responsibilities as the deputy city clerk, is being there every single day, is making sure that the public knows that they have a city clerk who will be there every single day, who's accessible. And I will, like always, have an open door policy where anyone can come in and provide their feedback to me so I can learn how can we do the responsibilities of this office better. I'll also continue to work collaboratively with city staff and elected officials to have them provide their feedback on the work that I'm doing. I'm also going to base it on the way we provide services, making sure that they're done effectively, making sure that the record keeping in our office is done effectively as well, so as to not disturb the activities of the organization as a whole. I also will measure it by partnering up with organizations like I have in the past, such as the Evanston Public Library, or for example, the League of Women Voters. So that way we can seek community input to see how we can better be of service to the community at large, and making sure that public participation is up, not only during elections, but also weekly city council meetings.
All right, well, we've reached this time for closing statements. Again, there'll be 90 seconds, and we will be starting with candidate Wittenberg.
So I just want to let voters know how I stand out from other candidates, and we all have our unique traits. I am the candidate who is not only very competent of what it takes to get the job done in the FOIA office. I think that we all get a little weary at campaign time and hearing a lot of symbolic speech. I have actually effectuated that in our city government. I, again, will just close out by saying that I have boldly advocated for the public's rights, and particularly those to participate, to transparency, and to accountability. And I will continue that from inside the Civic Center, hopefully, if it's still inside the Civic Center. And I just want to stress the importance that all of those play together. We will not find solutions to our most intractable challenges if we are not working together, all with the same full and complete and true information and understanding, so we can collaborate and get creative with solutions for those ideas. And we can't connect with each other if we don't all have the information. Thank you. And thank you to the League.
Thank you. So something important that I feel like I've learned really well over the last 4 years is that in addition to legislative elected officials who are there for the right reasons, democracy also needs an active and engaged public participating to making their voices heard. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. And the city clerk is the avenue by which the public is able to make their voices heard. The Evanston city clerk doesn't just keep the records and codes of the city for no reason. That's there for public access and oversight. The city clerk manages public comment for access and oversight. And as clerk, I would work to create even more ways for citizens to make their voices heard during and in between council meetings. I would want to expand public access to local government processes so that we can actually see what the work is that our elected officials are doing for us before anything comes to a vote. Last, but certainly not least, I would want to work to continue to remove barriers to running for office, with the hope that our Evanston city government will continue to be meaningfully represented by our communities. And whatever else people watching this might think about the race, I encourage you all to vote for the person you feel who can best accomplish those goals. And if you think that that person is me, please remember to write in Jackson Paller when voting for the February 23rd election. Thank you.
I want to thank the League for giving us all this space to come and bring forth our ideas. I I invite you to vote for me. And I will be the only candidate on the ballot. And I think that proves that I know how to navigate a complex system, and that I am the most qualified person on the ballot to allow people and show people how to navigate this complex system as well. I have also proven that throughout a pandemic with 3 children and 2 jobs, that I was capable of coming to our community members and pleading my case to the public and saying, I want to run for office, and, circulating my petitions and sticking with it until I received more than 1,400 signatures. You will see my name on the ballot. My name is Stephanie Mendoza. I am on the ballot because I am qualified. I understand complex processes. This is a process that I want to teach everyone, to make sure that everyone in our community feels encouraged to run for office, and teach them this very complex process. My hope is also to bring forth transparency, access, and integrity to the clerk's office. And I join you in voting for me. I am proudly endorsed by our Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, Laura Fine, Jennifer Gongershwitz, Cam Davis, Josina Morita, and many more. And I invite you to also endorse me and vote for me. Thank you so
very
much.
much.
Yes, so I'm the only person here on this forum today who can proudly say that they have done the job of the city clerk. For the past 4 years, I have served the community as the deputy city clerk. And so I am prepared to seamlessly transition into that role to ensure that services and all other aspects of that office are not interrupted. I don't need any formal training on how to do the job. It'll just be another day in the office for me. I understand the role, and I encourage you all to support me and my candidacy, because I have been the one for the past 4 years who has made sure that that office is accessible, that is open, that we are able to provide services to our community. And with that, I will advocate for more transparency and partner up with some of the organizations in the community to bolster our civic engagement. And I think that is imperative, that we have someone that has already done the job, that knows how to do it effectively and will continue to do it, and also has the relationships with city staff and city council to move that office forward into the future. And so I welcome you all to write in my name on February 23rd, Eduardo Gomez. And I appreciate the league for having me here. I appreciate all the other candidates for joining us as well.
I would say that I have decades of professional experience as a federal agent, and I'm familiar with local, state, and federal governments. And I believe that I could act as a resource for the staff and elected officials. As the city clerk, I'm organized and goal-oriented. And I have to say, I would like to step into the problems of voter suppression. I think Evanston is a unique, fantastic city. And I think the voice of Evanston could be heard nationally on this. I do think voter suppression nationally is a big problem, and that we should step actively into that. I'd like to improve the office and modernize the office. You can find out more about me and my campaign at www.bbforclerk.com. And my name is Cynthia Beebe. If you want to write me in, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting all of us today. And lastly, please vote. Thank you.